Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Assembly Committee on Commerce and Labor. Will the Secretary please take roll?
Assemblywoman Backus. Present. Assemblyman Carter.
Present.
Assemblywoman Duran. Present. Assemblywoman Hardy. Here. Assemblywoman Howdigi.
Here.
Assemblywoman Kasama.
Here.
Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno.
Here.
Assemblyman O'Neill.
Here.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Here.
Assemblyman Yeager.
Here.
Assemblyman Urich.
Here.
Chair Marzola.
Here. Please indicate all committee members present. Welcome everyone that is here in Carson City, everyone in Las Vegas, and everyone listening over the internet. Today we are hearing Assembly Bill 21, but before we get started, I have... Can you hear me now? Okay. All right, before we get started, we're going to go through a few housekeeping items. Please silence all your electronic devices. If you wish to testify, please sign in at the table by the door. For those joining online, please be sure to mute your microphones when you are not speaking to minimize background noises. When testifying, please turn on the microphone and clearly state your name and affiliation, if any, for the record. Then turn the microphone off each time you are done speaking. If you have handouts for the members of the public, please provide 20 copies to the committee secretary prior to your testimony. In addition, exhibits and amendments must be submitted electronically as a PDF file to our committee manager no later than noon on the prior business day. I expect courtesy and respect in all our interactions, even if we may not agree. Lastly, committee members will be using their laptops to view handouts and other documents. Please do not view this as a sign of disrespect or inattention. With that, let's get started. I will now open the hearing on Assembly Bill 21. This measure revises provisions related to persons engaged in the transmission of money and certain related activities. If Ms. Sandy O'Loughlin and Mary Young from the Division of Financial Institution of the Department of Business and Industry can get started whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. I'm Sandy O'Loughlin, Commissioner for the Financial Institutions Division. With me is Deputy Commissioner Mary Young. I'm here to present AB 21, which revises various provisions of existing law concerning money transmission. AB 21 adopts the Money Transmission Modernization Act, which is a set of nationwide standards and requirements for money transmission. I will use MTMA throughout my testimony. Currently, each state has its own laws and rules to license and regulate money transmission. The variation among 50 states has resulted in inconsistent standards, creating an unnecessary, complex compliance environment for companies operating in multiple states. To create a single set of standards, the Conference of State Banking Supervisors adopted requirements and tasked a group of regulators and the industry representatives with drafting legislative language reflecting the high standards. The result is a risk-focused model law that will enable an integrated system of licensing and supervision across the state system. All states are encouraged to adopt MTMA to implement clear, consistent standards across the state system. Nevada law, NRS 671, is antiquated and in desperate need of modernization to enable the FID to supervise a complex and growing industry with modern laws and standards. The NTNA intends to strengthen consumer protections through enhanced practical standards, modernize safety and soundness requirements to ensure customer funds are protected in an environment that supports competitive business practices, establishes a common baseline nationwide, making it easier for industry to comply with state law and to operate across state lines, and ensure states can coordinate in all areas of regulations, licensing, and supervision to eliminate unnecessary regulatory burden and more effectively utilize regulatory resources. These changes will benefit industry by providing clear, transparent, and strong regulatory requirements that are uniform across the states. Furthermore, the industry worked with the Conference of State Banking Supervisors and played an essential role in developing the final standards implemented in MTMA. Their cooperation and collaboration informed the process and led to the final product that supports innovative business practices while ensuring a safe and sound supervisory system. MTMA will benefit consumers, industry, and the FID. Chair Marzola, at this time, and due to the length of the bill, I would like to ask if you would like me to summarize each section of the bill or go directly to the amendments.
Can you please go through each section?
Sure. I'll try to be brief. Section 4 through 32 defines words and terms for the purposes of this bill. Section 33 determines the requirements to establish when a transaction involving money transmission takes place in this state versus out of state. Section 34 and 35 allows the division to exempt a person not specified in the chapter and request documentation demonstrating why the person qualifies for the exemption. Section 36, subsection 1, allows the division to enter into agreements with other government officials, state and federal regulator agencies, and regulatory associations to improve efficiencies and reduce regulatory burden, as well as accept examinations, audits, and investigation reports. We are proposing an amendment to remove subsection 2 at the last sentence of this section. Section 37 and 82 makes certain information and documents confidential and sets forth the circumstances under which information and documents may be disclosed. Section 38 and 40 revises requirements regarding the remittance of money, credits, and monetary value by the person who engages in money transmission on behalf of a licensee as an authorized delegate. Section 39 provides that a person who engages in the business of money transmission on behalf of an unlicensed person who is not exempt from licensure is jointly liable. Section 40 through 44 sets forth the certain requirements related to transactions involving money transmission. Section 45 requires a licensee to maintain at all times permissible investments with the market value of not less than an aggregate amount of all outstanding money transmission obligations. Sections 46 and 47 sets forth the investments that qualify for permissible investments. Section 48 authorizes the division to suspend or revoke a license if the licensee does not continue to meet the requirements for a license. Section 49 requires a licensee to always maintain a net worth in a specified amount. Sections 50, 51, and 52 set forth the process of seeking approval from the division for the change of control of a current licensee and what persons are not required to comply with these requirements. We are proposing to remove subsection 2B from section 50. Section 53 requires notification to the division if a licensee adds or replaces a key individual. Section 54 authorizes the division to participate in certain multi-state supervisory processes. Section 55 provides that if the provision of this bill is inconsistent with the federal law governing money transmission, the federal law governs to the extent of the inconsistency. Section 56 through 61 imposes certain requirements concerning reporting and record keeping. Section 62 authorizes the division to issue an order suspending or revoking a designation of an unauthorized delegate under certain circumstances. Section 63 authorizes the division to issue a cease and desist order to an authorized delegate for violations. Section 64 authorizes the division to resolve matters arise from violations through a consent order. Section 65 requires the consideration to promote uniformity of the law with respect to money transmission. Section 66 covers persons the chapter does not apply to. We are proposing an amendment to add to this section. Section 67 prohibits a person from engaging in the business of money transmission unless the person has been issued a license by the division or is an authorized delegate of a licensee. Section 68 sets forth certain requirements for an application for a license. Section 69 sets forth the circumstances under which the division is required to issue a license to an applicant. Section 70 sets forth requirements for the renewal of a license. Section 71 makes a conforming change to refer to an authorized delegate instead of the duly appointed agent as in current law. Section 72 states the division may implement the provisions of this chapter in a manner that is consistent with all states that have adopted similar laws and participate in the nationwide protocols for licensing, cooperation, and coordination among state regulators. Section 73 requires additional information to be submitted to the division through the nationwide multi-state licensing system and revises the list of persons required to submit fingerprints or other information. Section 74 sets forth the requirements and amount for a surety bond. We are proposing an amendment to revise subsection 1 and 2 of this section. Section 75 revises provisions related to examinations for licensees. Section 76 and 77 are subsections that would be removed in their entirety in the amendment. Section 78 authorizes the division to conduct investigations and hearings to determine if, Mary, I've lost a page. Sorry about that. If an authorized delegate violated the chapter. Section 79 revises the list of acts that constitute grounds for suspension, revocation, or denial of a renewal of a license. Section 80 added a new subsection, but is in error. We are proposing for an amendment to remove the subsection 2. Section 81 provides for a person who, without license, engages in the activity of which the license is required is guilty of a misdemeanor. Section 82 amends NRS 239.10 to incorporate Section 37, the confidential section in this bill. Section 83 allows a licensee in existence prior to July 1 of 2023 to operate under existing law until January 1 of 2024. Sections 84 repeals certain provisions of NRS 671. Section 85 establishes the effective date. That sums up all of the sections. I will go to the amendments. Did you find it in there? These amendments are to address items inadvertently left off the bill or that by the division or in a drafting error. Section 36, subsection 2, lines 29 through 32. Remove the last sentence of this section. The division does not intend to charge the industry fees that have already been established in current law. Section 50, subsection 2B, lines 6 and 7. Remove this subsection in its entirety. The division does not intend to charge the industry fees that are not already established in current law. Section 66, subsection 1, lines 30 and 31, add or any subsidiary of back into the bill language. Section 74, subsection 1 and 2, lines 1 through 11, revise the language for the average daily money transmission liability. Section 76, lines 28 through 35, remove this section in its entirety. Section 77, lines 36 through 43, and lines 1 through 17 on the following page. Remove this section in its entirety. Section 80, subsection 2, lines 42 through 45, and lines 1 through 6 on the following page. Remove the subsection in its entirety. The division does not intend to charge the industry fees that have already been established in current law. Thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions from committee members.
Thank you so much for your presentation and going through it for us. Let's start with Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I do have 2 questions, if that's okay, and possibly more if there's time at the end. Nice to see you, Commissioner. I just had a quick question, and actually you answered one of my questions regarding the fees. So I know you have about 119 entities that would qualify to be licensed under this. Will you be able to collect fees under a different structure in your division for this new license, or will you just not be collecting any fees whatsoever for these new licenses that are being issued?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Hattigi. Sandy O'Loughlin for the record. If I understand the question correctly, the fees that are in place currently right now and are not going to change, and we're not adding any additional fees to any of the licensees in this bill.
Correct. So will you, for this new license that you're issuing, will you be able to collect any fees for them?
Oh, this is for our existing 671 license. We've incorporated it into the existing chapter.
Okay, thank you.
So
And
it's not a new set of licensees. Sorry.
Thank you. And if I could, Madam Chair, follow up. And if we could go to section 66, my question was on subsection 2. Just relating it back to my professional day job, I know that excluded from this, it says, companies that offer settlement services. So that includes any type of escrow companies. And then subsection 3 of that says any payees who collect or process a payment from a payer to a payee. Would that also exclude any property managers?
What subsection? 66.
Yes, section 66, sub 2 and 3.
Yeah. I'm going to give that to Deputy Commissioner Mary Young.
Mary Young for the record. Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Hattigi. To answer your first question, if I heard you correctly, for subsection 2, that would refer to like a payment processor, and then subsection 3 would apply to anyone that is an appointment of an agent of a payee by contract. So normally, it depends on the exact contract and what the relationship is. And if you could repeat your exact question for me again, please.
Thank you, because I noticed subsection 2 specifically excludes any settlement services, any entities considered settlement services, but like escrow, when it comes to a real estate transaction, is considered a settlement service. So I just want to make sure that they would be excluded under the provisions of this subsection.
Mary Young for the record, yes, that is correct, they would be.
Okay, thank you.
Next, we'll go to Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If I could ask a couple questions, I would appreciate it. And really, they're based just on the amendments. So it looked to me in removing parts of Section 36 and parts of Section 50, presumably that removes the 2/3 requirement on the bill because those are the sections referenced for the 2/3 requirement. And I guess my question on the proposed amendment in Section 36(2), it takes away the language where the commissioner may impose and collect proportionate and equitable fees and costs associated with the actions required to achieve the purpose of this chapter. So my question there is it just a fact that you don't think you need to collect additional fees to achieve the purpose of this chapter? Are those fees being collected elsewhere in the regulatory scheme that you guys are already using?
That is correct. Thanks. Sorry about that. Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Yeager. Sandy O'Loughlin for the record. Yes, our fee structure is in place, and we do not need additional fees in order to take the Modernization Act.
Great, thank you. Madam Chair, could I ask a follow-up? So my other question is on the very last amendment that you're proposing in Section 80, sub 2. And I notice in that section 80, there's already the ability to oppose an administrative fine of not more than $10,000 upon somebody. But the language that's proposed to be deleted in the bill is the language that gives you permission to be able to essentially issue an additional civil penalty, but also to recover the reasonable costs of enforcing the section, including investigation and prosecution. And so I guess I have a similar question there, because my thought initially was, if someone's violating this provision, you ought to be able to recover your reasonable costs associated with prosecuting or rectifying that violation, including fees and costs. But do you already have that ability under current statute? Because I would hate to see that taken out and have to take those funds from somewhere else in the budget rather than recovering from someone who's violating the provisions.
Thank you for the question, Assemblyman Yeager. Sandy O'Loughlin for the record, and yes, that is part of our current statute. We do collect for that.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Assemblywoman Backus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to kind of follow off what the speaker was asking on some of the amendments. Another amendment that you were indicating that was being made was to, I believe, section 77, and I thought it was two sections actually, section 77 and 76. And maybe I may have been mistaken. Were you deleting section 76 in first part as part of the amendment?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Backus. Yes, we were eliminating that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because my notes were separate. With respect to that deletion, why is it that you were removing having the rates be put up on the internet and just limited to postings?
Sorry about that. Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Backus. That falls under Regulation E and how those fees can be disclosed. And Regulation E is very clear, so we didn't put it in here because Regulation E is in that. That's the section for Regulation E. And it's on the receipts. Where is my...
Madam Chair, can I ask a follow-up? And maybe I just misunderstood it, because when I was reading 76, I was taking this as the person, like the licensee's rates being charged, and not actually the regulatory fees that are being imposed that would be governed under the Nevada Administrative Code. And so maybe that's where I misunderstood this. Is this section actually applicable to your governing board as opposed to the licensees?
Deputy Commissioner, for the record, thank you for the question. That section was for our licensees to comply with, for the licensees to post or disclose to a consumer the fees before they charge the fees, either by on the receipt or now Regulation E will cover that.
Madam Chair, I have a completely different question. May I ask that?
Go ahead. And just remember, when you're not speaking, to turn off your microphones, please.
If I may direct you to page 11, section 37 of the bill. This pertains to what is to be maintained as confidential. My question with this is, there is the caveat that allows the division to go ahead and make certain information public, although one cannot subpoena such information. And I was kind of confused by that. And so I was hoping that I could have an example of what the commission may find to be disclosed as part of the public interest versus the broad subsection that precludes such information as being disclosed pursuant to a subpoena. And also with that, I have a kind of a subpart question. I took a look at the website and I was unable to find a list of licensees. And so I wasn't sure if that is made publicly available. It seems like in another provision that kind of information could be made available to the public. Thank you.
Excuse me, Assemblywoman Bacchus, Sandy O'Loughlin for the record. Can you give me that section again? You said page 11, but section what?
Section 37.
Oh, 30. Just- Assemblywoman Bacchus, Sandy O'Loughlin for the record. Are you asking about the information that we provide to the public versus what we will provide for a subpoena?
Yes, that's what, and I'll repeat it if that's helpful. Under section 37, subsection 1, it makes it explicit that information is to be maintained confidential, even to the point that such information could not be secured via a subpoena. And I'm not sure how broad that is intended, if it's to be inclusive of both civil subpoenas as well as criminal subpoenas. But then subsection 2 turns around and negates that provision whenever the commissioner determines that the information, there's subsection A and B, so to any, the commissioner finds that justice and the public advantage will be served by the disclosure of such information. So I kind of was looking for an exemplar of when that would happen, because it's just, to me, was quite unique.
Assemblywoman Bacchus, I do not want to give you an answer that says it depends. So can I get that information back to the committee members?
If you can give that information to the committee secretary, thank you.
Thank you.
Assemblywoman Torres.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. And just for some clarification, are there any instances, obviously this has to do with large transactions, maybe in between businesses, but then is there any, because, what section is it? I believe this is section 43 on page 16 of the bill. It does focus on when forms must be available in other languages. So I'm just wondering, is there what other companies might this apply to?
Thank you for the question, Assemblywoman Torres. You mean outside of the money transmission business line?
So could you just give some practical examples just to make sure that I'm understanding it correctly so that I can ask probably a follow-up?
Okay. Deputy Commissioner, for the record, thank you for the question. For subsection 2 of section 43, that is talking about the receipt required by the section to be given to the actual consumer that's transmitting money. So normally it's a consumer, and it would be any business that is using the transmission services. So it could be for bill pay. So it could cover a large number of companies, but specifically the money transmitters would be the one who are issuing those receipts.
Okay, and I guess I'll follow up if I may, Chair. And so, I guess the question I have is regarding the receipt being in English, and if different, the language principally used by the licensee or authorized delegate. I want to ensure that, under what circumstances, it says used to advertise, solicit, and only when it's done that's principally used for that. But like, is that going to be in every instance in which organization is working with communities? So I imagine if there's any type of work being done in a predominantly Spanish-speaking community, for example, will it require this then to be translated? Because it does say principally I just want to make sure that that's very clear that those forms have to be available, because oftentimes what happens in a lot of these banking forms is that an individual will go to the bank and then they're just told sign here, and somebody translates orally, and I don't know that I'm comfortable actually with that language using orally, because somebody, depending on their Spanish, might not be able to properly translate or provide those services, and then somebody is misunderstanding but still signing a contract.
Thank you for the concern, Assemblywoman Torres. We could address that in the regulation. We could also take out orally.
Any other questions? I'm just going to ask to see if she can give us. You want me to ask? What? Go ahead. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you, Commissioner. I think just for helping the committee understand and helping myself understand, could you just give us like an example of maybe some money transmitters, some names of companies that we would be familiar with, so we can understand what kind of entities this bill would regulate?
Mary Young, Deputy Commissioner for the record. Some of our biggest licensees would be Western Union, MoneyGram, there's PNP, Square, Circle, PayPal, SoFi. There's a lot of big companies and there's a lot of little smaller ones within our state. But those are the big ones that you guys would recognize.
Thank you for the follow-up, Chair. And I'm asking for a friend, but would this regulate William Hill as a money transmitter?
Thank you for the question. Sandy O'Loughlin from the record. I don't believe we have William Hill as one of our money transmitters.
Any questions? I did have one, but my colleague, Assemblywoman Backus, asked about Section 76, so I appreciate that. Since there are no more questions, we will open up to hear testimony in support of Assembly Bill 21. Is there anyone here in Carson City? Please remember you have 2 minutes. You can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Marzola. Members of the committee, my name is Jimmy Lau with Ferrari Reader Public Affairs, first name Jimmy, last name Lau, Lau. Speaking on behalf of Intuit today, we submitted a letter in support of the measure. We'd like to thank FID for bringing forward this bill. We think it's a good move to standardize the licensure formats across multiple states, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Michael Hillerby with Kemper Kroll on behalf of MasterCard. Here also today in support of the bill, we'd like to thank Commissioner O'Loughlin and her colleagues at the State Conference of Banking Supervisors for coming up with the Model Act It's important that we provide strong, consistent regulatory rules for both consumers and businesses across the country and to protect the important role that state regulators have against federal encroachment. This bill does all of that and sets a very clear set of rules, and again, we think is a very positive step forward. Thank you very much for your support.
Thank you. Anyone else in support here in Carson City? I don't see anyone. Anyone in Las Vegas in support for Assembly Bill 21? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone in the line?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers for support at this time.
Thank you. Is there anyone in Carson City in opposition to Assembly Bill 21? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas in opposition to Assembly Bill 21? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line in opposition?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers for opposition at this time.
Thank you. Next, we will go to neutral position for Assembly Bill 21. Is there anyone here in Carson City? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to testify in the neutral position? Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, the line is open and working, but there are no callers for neutral at this time.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Laughlin, would you like to do some closing remarks?
Thank you, Chair. I want to thank you and the committee members for allowing me to present AB 21. We appreciate the questions and look forward to this moving on.
Thank you. I will now close the hearing on Assembly Bill 21. I will now open up for public comment. Public comment is limited to 2 minutes per person. Public comment may be submitted in writing to the committee up to 24 hours after the hearing. For those persons who wish to provide testimony telephonically, please call 669-900-6833. When prompted, please enter meeting ID number 832-520-77259 and press pound. Is there anyone here in Carson City wishing to give public comment? I don't see anyone. Is there anyone in Las Vegas wishing to give public comment? I don't see anyone. Broadcast, is there anyone on the line?
Chair, the public line is open and working, but there are no callers at this time.
Thank you. Committee members, anyone have any questions? That concludes our meeting today. Our next meeting will be Monday, February 20th at 1:30 p.m. This meeting's adjourned.